I said to myself, I will test you with pleasure. Actually, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
I will test you with pleasure, so enjoy yourself, and behold, it too was found to be futile. I said of laughter, it is madness, and of pleasure, what does this accomplish? I explored with my mind how to stimulate my body with wine while my mind was guiding me wisely and how to take hold of this folly until I could see what good there is for the sons of men to do under heaven in the few years they have in their lives. I enlarged my works and built homes for myself. I planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks for myself. I planted in them all manner of fruit tree. I made ponds of water from which to irrigate a forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves. I had home-born slaves. Also I possessed flocks and herds larger than all who have preceded me in Jerusalem. I have collected for myself much silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I provided for myself both male and female singers and the pleasures of men and many concubines. Then I became great and increased more than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. My wisdom also stood with me, and all that my eyes desired I did not refuse myself. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. Therefore I considered all my activities which my hands had done, and all the labor which I had exerted, and behold, I found all to be vanity, and as if striving after the wind, and there was no profit in it under the sun. So I turned to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. For what will the man do who will come after me, the king, except that which has already been done? And I saw that wisdom excels folly, and as light excels darkness. For the wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I know that one fate will befall them both. Then I said to myself, as is the fate of the fool, it will also befall me. Why then have I been so extremely wise? So I said to myself, even wisdom is vanity. There is no lasting remembrance of the wise man as with the fool, inasmuch as in the coming days all will be forgotten, and how the wise man and the fool alike will die. So I hate life, and for the work which I had done under the sun was grievous to me, because everything is futility, as if striving after the wind. Thus I hated all the fruits of my labor, for which I have labored under the sun. I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool? Yet he will have control over all the fruit of my labor, which I have labored for by acting wisely under the sun, which I have found to be vanity. Therefore I completely despaired of all the fruit of my labor, for which I had labored under the sun. When there is a man who has labored with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, he gives his legacy to one who has not labored with him. This too is a great evil and pure vanity. For what does a man get in all his labor, in all his striving with which he labors under the sun? Because all of his days, his task is painful and a grievous existence. Even at night, his mind does not rest. For this too is vanity. There is nothing better for a man to do than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good. This also I have seen, even that which is from the hand of God. For who can eat and who can have enjoyment without him? For to a person who is good in his sight he is given wisdom, knowledge, and joy, while a sinner he is given the task of gathering and collecting, so that he may give it to one who is good. This too is vanity, as if striving after the wind. This guy's a real bummer. Who wants to invite him to your party? Come on in, man. Everybody's having too good a time. Bum them out, will you? But the fact of the matter is, we know people like this, don't we? Even in this modern day and age of enlightenment and wisdom, there's always the one guy that hates everything. The reason for your hate is of really no consequence. You know, you hate this, you hate your job, you hate your wife, you hate your kids, you hate your home, you hate your family, just hate everything. You're a miserable old cuss, you leave everything, where do you go? Well, you go off and you find yourself by yourself, and then you find out that you hate yourself. Should have stayed home and it saved you some time and trouble. Yeah. Well, and the problem is when you resign yourself to that which is this world, let's face it, in a way we're all victims or prisoners, if you will, slaves, if you want, of this world. None of us can really get off it, can we? I mean, we shoot guys up into space, they whip around, but yeah, they're still prisoner in that little man-made capsule, which is a little bit of Earth, basically. And they fling around the planets for a while, and then they come back and they land back on Earth, and where are they?
Back home.
Back right where they started from, you know, the same place. And none of us can get off of this earth when you think about it. Now, if you think about it, then you start understanding the reality of just what the Bible has told us in the beginning ever since Genesis chapter 3. You will spend your days under the sun. This is the sun, by the way. And by the sweat of your brow you shall eat, you shall cultivate the fields, and you shall eat thistles and thorns until you what? Until you die. There's no way off this planet, fellas. There's no way. This is your capsule, if you will, forever. And when you look at it in this terms, then you can also extend to that or project that out and say, well, if this is my beginning and this is my end, why bother?
No.
Why bother with the in-between, you know? Even Frank Sinatra sang about that, didn't he? Accentuate the positive, relegate the negative, and don't mess with Mr. In-between. He sang that song. Was that Frank? I think that was Frank. Might have been one of those other guys, but anyway. So when you get to this point and you see this earth as your only existence, and this earth has already been relegated to die, and even it is passing away, then the question becomes, why should I try anything? You know, and you say, oh, Tom, that's going to a bit extreme. Are you kidding me? The last 2 generations have become just this. They are so worldly, and they, oh, I graduated from college and I can't get a job. I don't really want a job. He wants to live in mom's basement and have everything brought to him and so he can play his video games, because his video games, at least there he can win. You know, in life he can't win.
Pretty soon his mom's going to die and he's going to be left in that basement all alone.
Well, okay. That's his capsule. But this is a very limited understanding of life. God says life is more than you can even imagine. First of all, it's more than a physical existence. Right from the get-go, God says there's a world far beyond your simple existence in the physical. There's a spiritual world. Jesus, throughout the entire Gospel of John, answers the questions spiritually that man asks in the physical. Jesus says, if you ever want to see this life, supposedly where God is, you must be born again. And Nicodemus answers, well, how can an old man re-enter his mother's womb to be born again? His answer is very physical, very existential is what the philosophers call it. Remember, philosophy all comes from man, stems from man by the very nature of its beast, and takes into account the existence of man's environment. So anyway, the best and most greatest wisdom of man is going to do what? Well, it's going to end at the grave. Because he's unable to get off this planet. But God says there is a spiritual world, and as Jesus says, you can come here. You can have residence here. You can exist here in all of the characteristics of this Spirit, which is God. And that existence is much grander than anything you'll ever know here. Even Jesus said to his boys, there's so much stuff I got to tell you, but you can't handle it now. You're not ready. Your brain ain't big enough. But you will know. I will tell you. You will see me again. And when you see me again, you will rejoice far beyond anything you can imagine. I like that song, I Can Only Imagine. You ever hear that song? You know, in a way, that's a good question to ask. What will I do when I come into the presence of Jesus? Will I jump and shout and scream and say, yeah? Or will I just fall down and be quiet and not be able to make a sound? Did y'all see that movie, I Can Only Imagine? It's a good movie. Anyway, the deal is, this earth is not all there is. And Jesus said, how is it you are a leader of men, and yet you have imprisoned yourself to this planet? You are an ambassador of God, one of the elders of Jerusalem, and yet you're thinking in terms of only men. There's something beyond this. How come you're unaware of that? That was Jesus' response to Nicodemus. How is it that you're a leader of Jerusalem and this is as far as you can offer? Well, you're not offering anybody anything. This is Genesis chapter 3 right here. And they sinned and God cursed them and said, you're going to work your whole life regardless of whether you work well or work poorly, whether you're smart or poor or dumb or rich or gorgeous or ugly as a bag of hammers. You're going to die. And when you die, that'll be it. Bob Coleman, incredible professor, man of God, had a skull on his desk. I can't draw a skull. But the skull is there, and in front of the skull is a little sign that says, all wisdom ends at the grave. Of course, Chandler's response to that was, well, then I don't have to take this final exam, do I? He says, well, the grave comes earlier for some than others. I said, oh, my career's going to be dead. Is that what you're telling me? He says, I would take the exam if I were you. I said, but I understood what he was trying to say. All wisdom of man, all effort of man, all striving of man, regardless of how impressive or memorable it may be, will eventually end at the grave. I mean, how many of you remember who the MVP was of the 1929 Boston Red Sox? Anybody? I don't know either. I'm just asking you. But I'm sure in 1929, when they did win the pennant that year, somebody was given the MVP, and that probably was a great honor for him. And he ran all over and went, yay, for a year or two. And here we are at 2018. Who remembers? Who even cares? Nobody. This is also the problem with mankind, is we don't remember. And our memories are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. It used to be in the old days, my mother could tell you her first kiss. And the boy who kissed her, where it was, how it happened, how long it was, how wonderful it was. And she could tell you the color of the grass and the blowing breeze and the color of the leaves and how many trees were around her. Today, most women can't tell you who their first husband was because they're on like number 6. Why? What's happened to us? Well, in a way, we're all saying, oh well, I'm stuck on this planet. I got nothing going for me, so. Who remembers their first job?
I do.
First real job.
Yeah.
What was the name of your boss?
Ray Bennett.
Huh?
Ray Bennett.
Ray Bennett? Oh, your man. Your old man. That doesn't count.
I remember my first boss.
Kirk, 7 years old, employed me for 50 cents a day to sweep sidewalks. He had a big lawn service, and that was back in the days in the late 50s, early 60s, before they had blowers. Those things didn't exist yet. But nevertheless, you mow the yard, grass went all over the sidewalk, right? So you had in the driveway and everything else. So somebody had to get out there and literally sweep it off. So he employed me and another kid for 50 cents a day. And at the end of the week, we would get cash, $2.50 for 5 days' work after school. We were living large. $2.50 would buy you a huge handmade chocolate shake at Barney's in that day drugstore.
Plus a hamburger.
Sit up on the soda things and whip around on his chairs 100 miles an hour. And he'd let us read all the comic books and we didn't have to buy them, which was awesome. Good old Barney. $2.50 would not only get you that shake at the end of the week, but it would also get you 8 Army Men. 8 of those big plastic Army Men. You know, they were a quarter piece. So 50 cents for the shake, quarter for Army Men. That got me 8 guys. I'm not talking little green guys. Remember the big giant green guys? And the gray ones were the Germans and the green ones were the Americans. I had a whole army. Worked and paid for by myself. Sweeping driveways. Who remembers that? Everybody remembers that in my generation. Today, who remembers? The last 2 generations? They don't remember squat. Now, as many stories as I have of my sweeping, what has that done for me to get me anywhere I am? Well, maybe it taught me humility, maybe it taught me the value of $1, maybe it taught some basic lessons like that. But finally, when it's all said and done and I stand before Jesus, is it going to make any difference at all? Not at all. Paul says everything I was, everything I ever hoped to be, everything I could consider, I count as loss next to knowing this. Remember who Paul was. He was the 7th son of the tribe of Benjamin. He was the priest. He was the priest to the other priests. And he considered himself, according to the law of God, completely blameless. That's incredible. That's a resume right there. And yet by his own admission, he says, everything I was, everything I've accomplished, everything that has been done in this earth, I count it as loss next to knowing Jesus Christ as my Lord. Wow. That's a man right there who got off this planet. He got off this planet. Oh, he's still on it, but he got off it. That's what Jesus said. He says, you're here, but you're no longer here. You're part of this world, but you're no longer of this world. What does that mean? When Jesus said that, what does that mean? He goes, well, for a while you got to eat and drink and, breathe oxygen like everybody else, but that'll come to an end. And what will take place after that, in the twinkling of an eye, will last forever. You're in this world, but you're no longer of it. What does that mean? That mean you're not going to die? No, you're going to die. One of these days, the mechanics of this body is going to break down. Already started, trust me. One of these days, this will cease to be. But somehow, and I'm not sure, I'm really hoping, and I'm really praying, and I'm pretty assured so far by scriptural, biblical promise that this will happen. Now, what this is, I'm not sure. We've all talked about that in Revelation. God has a place prepared for us. Well, what kind of place is that going to be? Will we eat and drink there? Jesus said, I will not drink wine with you until we drink it together anew in the kingdom of my Father. So maybe we do eat and drink there. Will we have bodies there like this? You know, we're told, well, our body will be restored and be made perfect. Well, you know, I won't be a whole lot of work for God, but what does that mean? Will we know each other there? Well, I know Tim. Will Roller Bob still be in a chair?
No.
Nope.
He'll be running.
How do you know that? Maybe his chair will be running and jumping.
Sounds like dancing with all the girls.
How is that possible? Because in God, there's no male or female. There's a problem.
We don't lose our imagination.
I go, hey, Carol, it's you. And you know, I'm Chuck Bennett, remember? Get away from me, you. In God, there's no male or female. That's just a little mechanic he put on this planet for the propagation of us. Yeah. But in heaven, there is no male or female. Interesting. All the angels in the Bible are always in the male or the masculine gender. There ain't no female angels ever mentioned in the Bible anywhere. And yet every time you see a holy show, what happens? Blonde women. Blonde women, every one of them. I don't know where that happens in the Bible. In the Bible, they're all big, ugly, mean guys. Gabriel's probably a little on the softer side. But Michael isn't. Michael's a big, mean S-O... You finish the sentence. S-O-A. S-O-A? Son of an angel, I guess. I don't know. And certainly the third named angel is no nice guy. His name is Satan. Remember him? An angel God got and threw down to earth. Only 3 named angels in the Bible. Satan, Michael, and Gabriel. I don't know. Will I be Tom up there? There'll be a billion Toms.
But there might be a name. Apparently those were named.
How would that be, man, if your mother named you something like Harcourt and you have to go through eternity with that name? Harcourt. Yeah. Tom's bad enough. That's like Bob or Bill, Mike, Jim. How about if your name was La Shwanda? You had to deal with that forever. Then all the Hispanic guys named Jesus. That's going to cause a problem. Really? Think about it. I get to see him face to face. Well, which face are you? Are you Jesus or Jesus? And mine, I'm Jesus, man. Somehow I'm not believing you. I'm making light of it. But the fact of the matter is, this world is more than detailed and outlined in the Bible. It makes it quite plain. It is. It does exist. And Jesus speaks of it matter-of-factishly. Matter-of-factishly. Just like I would say, hey, Chuck, would you do me a favor and run out to my truck and get my phone I left on the dashboard? You wouldn't say, well, Tom, what's a truck? You wouldn't say, Tom, does that truck really exist? Is it out there? Do you really own a truck? No, you do just say, sure, I'll help you. And you get up and you go out in front, you see the big white truck right there in the first space, and you say, yeah, that's Tom's truck. You go in, there's a phone, you bring it in, right? You wouldn't question anything about that. You would say, you're a friend, I'll help you out, I'll go get it, you keep teaching. That's the way Jesus talks about heaven. That's the way Jesus talks about this spiritual realm. Just as matter-of-factishly as if I asked Chuck to go get my phone out of my truck. There's no question in his mind. There's no doubt or a maybe. There's no maybe at all. It simply is. And he says over and over again, that which I've seen, That which I have heard, that which I have known. Nobody knows the kingdom except he who descended from the kingdom, who is me. That's why Jesus spoke so matter-of-factly. Now, the people in this limited edition, this limited existence, they were saying, well, by what authority do you say these things? By what authority do you do these things? By what authority? They couldn't get it, you see. They were the priests. They were in charge. They could command all things here. But Nicodemus, how is it that you think you command all things here and you know nothing about this? If you were a plumber, I could understand that. But you're not. You're a priest. You're a man of God that knows nothing about God. How is that possible? How is that possible? And then Jesus does something really unique. He likens it unto the wind. There's a familiar phrase. He says, behold the wind. Barbara, look. You go outside right now, you behold the wind. You feel it, don't you? And if you're standing like next to a tree, you can hear it through the leaves. You can hear it, rustling through the whatever. But can you see it? No, you can't see the wind. You might see some junk the wind is carrying, but you can't see the wind. You can feel it though, so you know it's there. But you can't see it. You can hear it.
Sometimes.
But you can't really hold on to it, could you? If I said, go out and get me a big bucket of wind, could you do that? Unlike Chuck with the truck, Chuck would say, okay, I'll go get your phone out of the truck. If I said, go get me a big bag of wind and bring it back in. No, don't bring me out of land. That's not the kind of bag of wind I'm looking at. If I said, go get me a big box of wind, could you do that? Well, now you might raise the question and say, Tom, how in the world am I going to get a box of wind? So just hold it up there like that till it's full. Careful you don't spill it out. And then close the box real quick, and when we get back in here, we'll open it. We'll all be cool. Tom, it doesn't work that way. It is real, but it can't be governed by the mechanics, the physics, or the command of this earth. So even in our existentialism, in our existence, God gives us elements of simple things that are far beyond our abilities. Something as simple as the wind. And Jesus says to Nicodemus the priest, how is it you can't understand this? Behold the wind. You feel that, don't you? You hear it, don't you? It blows against you. And yet you can't control it. You can't guide it. You can't tell it where to go. It goes where it wants, doesn't it? Very much. It can raise to the mightiest waves on the ocean, or it can cool a child on a hot day. It can be a blessing to the child or a curse to the sailor. 900-foot wave coming in on his little boat. Same wind. You can't see it. You can't control it, but it sure enough is bringing that 900-foot wave right at you. Or it's cooling that little potato head boy of yours on a hot afternoon. Blessing or a bane. A blessing or a cursing. It's funny how Jesus, as well as all the Old Testament prophets, refer to the day that we die and face God as the great and terrible day. You ever wondered why that was? Throughout the entire Old Testament, the end of your life, where we stand before the Lord, just as Jesus said, just as Peter and James write, it is given to every man to die but once, upon which he has an appointment. That he will keep, we're told. I like that. I think God's got a little sense of humor. And at that appointment, the Lord's going to render a decision on you. You'll be there all by yourself, Barb. I know you want me to go with you, but I got problems of my own. Fact of the matter is, you don't want to be standing close to me when we get to that great and terrible day. My luck, I'll end up behind Sister Teresa, Mother Teresa.
Well, my question would be, how are we going to get there?
How do we get there? That's another good question. How do we get there? Where is there?
There you go.
Where is there? Oh, it's up in the sky.
Do we know that?
I don't know. God seems to think it's real. Jesus seems to think it's real. Paul says we'll be caught up in the air. How high? Well, I don't know. It won't be male or female, so we can do away with that. That's no longer important. But we do get to drink wine, so it can't be all bad. I don't know. But the excitement of this life, the joy of this life, or at least it should be, is to discover as much as I can about there. I know about this. I'm pretty familiar with everything here. You know, that which is good, that which is not so good, that which kills, that which doesn't kill, that which sustains, that which is futile. I know running after the wind, trying to get a bag of wind is pretty, that's an exercise in foolishness. But I also know how to plant crops and grow food and feed my neighborhood. By the way, I'm up to my eyeballs in collard greens. Don't tell Mary Pinger she'll be over my house. I can't abide with that. I'll feed her, but she's too much crazy for me. I did not say that on film. I know the goods and bads of this earth. Am I equally aware of the goods and things going on in the next earth? I spent my life in the ministry. Well, Tom, you must know it all. I really don't. You've asked me questions this morning and I can't answer. I can speculate about what will it be for Cucaracha when she closes her eyes for the final time. Not wishing you will, but someday you will. What will it be like for her on that day? I don't know. I think she's a pretty solid woman of Christ. So I think it will be a good day. The great and terrible day, I think it will be the great day. But will she cease to be Cucaracha as I know her? Or will that essence go with her? Anybody ever see the movie Ghost? Remember that movie, Patrick Swayze? And he's walking away there in the end, and his wife is going, ah! And the little angel guys are whipping around him, you know, and he's all lighting up and glowing. You know, is that what happens? I don't know. He says, all the love inside, you get to take it with you. Remember that line there in the end? Is that what happens? I don't know. But I do know that my life here will cease someday. In this 40 years of ministry, no one will remember in 20 years any more than they remember the guy who won MVP for the Sox in 1939. Nobody will remember that. But then again, God says, He says in Ecclesiastes 2, we'll get it to the end. When all else is said and done, when it all comes to a finish, trust in God. You know how you leap to the end of a book and read it just to find out who did it? Leap to the end of Ecclesiastes and read the last 2 verses. In conclusion, when all has been heard, is this: fear God and keep His commandments, because this applies to every person. Because God will bring every act to judgment. Everything which is hidden, whether it is good or whether it is evil. It is given to every man to die but once, after which you got an appointment. I'm kind of jumped ahead of myself, but that's what his wisdom is going to bring it to. Chapter 2 is him looking at this earth saying, well, I tried this, I tried that, I tried this, I tried that, I tried this, I tried that, and you know what? I'm no better off for it now than I was before I started. This earth is futile because anything and everything that's ever been done will pass away, and in 20 or 30, 40, 50 years down the road, nobody's going to remember it anyway. So why bother to try? Well, that's kind of a defeatist attitude. Right now, he's a broken man. He's a defeated man. In fact, chapter 3, he's going to sing his own funeral dirge. That's what that is, by the way, that poem in chapter 3. It's a funeral dirge. I may as well already be dead. I'm like a zombie. I'm dead, but I'm still standing up. Well, that's a pretty sad outlook on your existence. Or you could ask another question, the interpretive question, as we theologians like to call it. Why am I in this existence? I didn't put myself here. Mom and Dad can't be held responsible for putting me here. Oh, they were the mechanism by which I got here, but certainly they didn't say, we're going to fashion this boy in our image. They didn't sustain the life or the whatever. They didn't design humankind. You go all the way back to Adam and Eve. Well, how'd they get here? So, if you are a descendant of Adam and Eve, and I'm assuming we all are if you believe in this God thing, we were put here for a reason. Do we know that reason? Well, if the whole world's become futile to you, why don't you invest your energy here? Why are you on this planet? Why have you been allowed to live your 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years? If whatever you accomplish isn't that great, and anything you build will fall down, and anything you eat will be done away with, then there must be another reason why you're here. A greater purpose that leaps beyond this existence, this classroom. There's a greater power at hand. Of course, Jesus said, I'll be with you forever. I'll never leave you, forsake you. I'm sitting right next to you, Barb. Barb, hey. Me, Jesus. Barb. Our whole life, he does that to us. With me, it's more like, Channer, knock it off. Channer. Okay, I get it.
You could be here for more than one reason, too.
Oh, I'm sure. That's when life gets fun. That's when life gets exciting. You know, you want to be an architect? Fine, that's wonderful. You want to be an educator? Great. Want to be a nurse? Okay. Businesswoman, you know, playwright, actress, politician. Ooh. Those are all great things. But certainly you can't, or at least shouldn't, limit yourself to just that. That eats up your time, keeps you busy, keeps you from getting bored. But this sparks to the very aspect, the very marrow of your being. Who is Tom Channer? Is he a 5'9" brown-haired lunatic? Yes. Is there nothing more to him? Oh, there's so much more. I remember a small child sweeping sidewalks for 50 cents a day. And he had a blast. And I had an army at my command of green men this big. And life was good and life was happy and Mom would yell, Tommy! All the moms did that back in those days. I don't know why. They didn't have cell phones. They just shouted out the window and the whole dang neighborhood, "Oh, Tanner, you're in trouble." No, it's lunchtime. She's just yelling for us to come eat something. Same thing was true if you were in trouble. How many times have I? And the whole neighborhood knew you did it. But life was good, and every morning the sun rose, and in the summertime we didn't have to go to school. And you know what we could do? We could play in the dirt all day long.
No shoes.
No shoes. I didn't own shoes till I was 15. Life was wonderful. And we explored every possibility of life on this earth. God forbid that a tractor should dig a 4-foot hole. You know what I found? Just think, what? 4-foot hole. Next day there's 300 kids in it. Why? It's a hole in the dirt. But it's a cool hole. That's what life was then. We were all seeking to find out who and what we were. Somewhere along that ride, somewhere along that fantasy, we grew up and that no longer became important. When I used to teach, I would ask, I'd sit in for other teachers and I'd be there with a class of second graders, kindergartners. And I'd say, who wants to be an astronaut when they grow up? Every hand would go up. Who wants to be a movie star? Every hand would go up. Who wants to be a hog farmer? Every hand would go up. Those kids could do anything. It didn't matter what it was. Who wants to be a soldier and drive a tank? Every hand would go up. Even the girls, little girls. Who wants to be a mermaid? Then all the girls' hands would go up. Somewhere along the way, that all stopped, right? And we started telling them, you can't do that. You're no good at this. Well, we tried to get that back by giving everybody a participation trophy. That's not going to help. That's not going to do anything. That's just going to confirm them then that they can get a prize for doing nothing. So why in the world would I want to move out of my mother's basement? The secret of adulthood, in my opinion, is just like this man here. Is to analyze everything you've been, you've said, you've done, you've tried, whether it was successful or not. And when it does seem that all is lost, don't give up there. Search for the greater meaning, the greater purpose of why you're here. That's what Paul came to understand. And his final words, the last letter he wrote before Nero cut his head off is, even now I'm about to be poured out like a drink offering. Even now, whether I face my life or my death, let God be glorified. Everything I was, everything I knew, everything I learned, everything I accomplished, I count as loss. Because now I know Jesus Christ is my Lord. When this world failed me, I found another one. Folks, that's Christianity. People say, oh, well, religion's for those who are weak-minded. Really? Really? I think this is for people who are weak-minded. Philosophies, ideologies, radicalism, thisism, thatism. And put an ism on it. Who cares? That's for the weak-minded. I can't advance myself any further than this earth. Therefore, let me be the biggest, meanest, nastiest guy on this earth. Great. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Jesus said, you will not give a single cup of cool water to a tiny child that will go unnoticed by the Lord. Someday you got an appointment that you will keep. And if you go all the way to the end of Ecclesiastes, this bozo finally figured it out. Because on that day, God will reveal everything. The worst words some people are going to want to hear when they stand before God is, let's go to the video. Oh no. But that can be avoided too. comes unto me, I will no way cast out. Anyone comes to me, I've already prepared a place for you in heaven. There's no sin I can't forgive except one, when you don't do this. When you resign yourself to this and don't even seek this, that's the only sin I cannot forgive, said Jesus. Blaspheme of the Holy Spirit. That's when you take God and say, not even worth investigating. You blow it off. That's the only sin Jesus won't forgive. He's not going to force you into heaven. You got to want to go. You got to want to be there. And you'll never get that place if you keep your eyes focused here. I loved those Army men when I was a child, 6, 7 years old. I don't have them today. I wish I did. They're probably worth a fortune. I know where they are. They're in front of my house, about 4 feet down. Locked in eternal combat with Paul Kirk's Army men. He had the gray guys. He was the German. I had the green guys. And they dug a 4-foot trench in my front yard. Because they were putting in new curbs and new roads and all that. Back in the old days, it used to just be asphalt and dirt and weeds and all that. They came along to put in new sewer lines, no more septic tanks. And then they put in curbing, you know, the nice curves with the... They were modernizing. And our soldiers were in front of the house in a 4-foot ditch. And we were fighting it out when Mom yelled for lunch. And we went in, and it was a great and gloriable... This was the great and terrible day in my life. It was a great day because Mom had discovered something new called ravioli in a can. God on earth, who put ravioli in a can? Mom would make it once or twice a year because it was so much trouble. And it was in a can. Just open the lid and heat it up. Chef Boyar, are you brilliant? And we went in and ate ravioli. While we were eating ravioli, the earth movers and all the graders and all that came along and filled in that ditch. 89 men gave their lives on my side. Paul had about 102. And they are now forever locked in eternal combat, 4 feet down in front of my childhood house. And Paul's house next door. One of these days they're going to excavate that for some reason. They're going to find those guys and they must have been gods. That's where my Army men are to this very day.
How many tears did you shed over that?
You know, as a 7-year-old boy, you had to act tough. I cried my eyes out, lost my whole army. I worked for 3 summers to build that army. And my favorite thing to do is go out and play Army men. You'd shoot them down with rubber bands. You'd have your mother's hairspray and a match, and it would be a flamethrower. Okay, we gotta go. Anyway, that's where my army is to this day. 4 feet in front of my house. 4 feet down in front of my house. To this very day. I learned the harsh realities of life and the meaning of the great and terrible day. Discovered ravioli in a can, and I lost my whole army in the same lunch.
You were bad.